Hello all and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Today we are doing what is arguably one of the sillier things I've done so far, which is to attempt to beat a 50cc all-cup tour without using items. Now, along with me I have, using Monsieur Donkey Kong, Bobbledead beside me, and the reason for that is because doing something like this is much more enjoyable with individuals playing along with you. Or at least, having a laugh with the circumstances that you're going through. It can make things a little more palatable. So, why the All Cup Tour? Well, first things foremost, we have completed all 50, 100, and 150cc basic cups up to this point without using items. And I'm pretty impressed by that. So, the only logical question at this point is how much further can we push this? And reality is that it's a lot easier to push further into the game than it might initially look. The All Cup Tour, for all of its goods and bads, is effectively an endurance challenge. It's not as difficult, statistically speaking, as the 50 or as the standard mushroom, star, flower, or special cups are. And this is because the margin for error in terms of points is significantly larger. Specifically, it's 4 times larger. So you end up with a situation where you can beat second place by an entire cup. This is a possibility, not one that's very common, but it is something to note. Now, because of this, we're doing this in one run. Yes, everything up to this point has been possible. Yes, we have proven that it is in fact reasonable to beat the entire game up to this point without the use of items. We're taking it to the logical extreme. With one race down, 15 to go, we're off to Mushroom Bridge. Mushroom Bridge is actually one of the weirder courses because it is actually one of the courses that was easiest to break in the game. Something that a lot of speedrunners ended up wanting to accomplish effectively just by throwing your character at a very specific angle off the bridge to this point where I'm driving now. You could effectively cross the 50% threshold, but because you fell at a certain point, you also got put back where you were, which puts you at another 50% threshold, allowing the player, the speedrunner, to effectively make a 7-second lap instead of 37 to 40-second lap. It's something that is notable as a difference between A and B, so to speak. Now, a lot of individuals that I've been checking in on have a bit of a gripe with traffic courses. And I'll be honest, they're not my favorite. Traffic courses have a level of unpredictability to them, but they're also more predictable than almost any other course, if that makes sense. Yeah, I have to avoid a car, specifically the red one I just hit. I have to avoid those, but the track itself, its base level, is actually significantly more simplistic than a lot of the, shall I say, special cup or later courses in the game. That was just silly. Okay. No, Donkey Kong, get back on the cart. Thank you. Okay. So, there are some sections of the game that are going to have, I suppose, challenging moments. But traffic courses are ones that, if done correctly, can be done very quickly, very consistently, but are also more simplistic just on a one-to-one base level driving. Anywho, 2 down. 14 to go. I'm actually surprised it's going fairly smooth and a lot faster than I was bargaining for. We're off to DK Mountain. And this is one of the courses that I want to look at as being somewhat more consistent, or consistently more challenging and interesting than some of the traffic courses. You have yourself the barrel cannon as the set piece of this course. And honestly, I gotta say that it's probably one of my favorite set pieces in any Mario Kart track. We have the top of the mountain with an angry, grumbly volcano, with the idea being that you are effectively driving down the side of an active volcano back towards the cannon itself to fire you back up. All good. As a kid, back when I was like 6 or 7 playing this game, I used to have this idea that I was getting chased down the mountain by a pool of lava, and especially on the final lap, ultimately culminating in crossing the bridge where it would immediately snap because, oh no, the lava got to the edge of the ropes. And I think that speaks a little bit to the whimsy of what they were aiming for with these tracks. The fact that an adult can play it and acknowledge it for being a more challenging or unique track, having the bumps and bruises, the stonework, the off-road sections, but you also have the childlike whimsy of this could be so much more if only this. And I think that does speak to a little bit of what humans are like as a whole. We are more logical as we grow up. We lose that sense of wonderment. But in the same way, we also can adopt and use that wonderment in different ways. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. The Danky Kang is doing pretty good. He's got the world's largest banana and will probably have it for most of the duration of this All Cup tour. Something I don't think I mentioned in a prior video, I suppose, comes down to the fact that Donkey Kong's capabilities, specifically with his special drop, the banana, is actually kind of unique. The banana, for whatever reason, has one of, if not the highest, drop rate in the game, allowing it to be used more consistently than almost any other special tool in the game as a whole. Anyway, we are finishing off what is effectively the first cup worth of tracks at Bowser's Castle, my home. Or, well, my driver's home. Bowser's Castle is another one of those somewhat more challenging tracks. It's designed to be, I suppose, a little bit harder to access in single player than it is in multiplayer. One thing that comes up, my younger brother and I used to play this all the time. And this particular track actually has some significant changes between the split screen version and the solo version. The split screen version takes out the fire bars and the thwomps, but the solo version has both. Effectively, if you are playing split screen, you are going to end up in a such circumstance where you will end up with a more challenging or a more simplistic version of the track, just as a result of some of the challenging aspects of the track are removed altogether, which is a little bit of a bummer. But don't let that get you down. For this is Bowser's Castle, and it is easily one of the more atmospheric courses in the game. I'll be honest, I'm 50-50 on this one. It is atmospheric, it is a bit more challenging, but I find that Bowser's castles have only gotten better in the later games. Excuse me, Donkey Kong, that was rude. Okay, really? We dropped the giant nanner. Now what? Anyways, this one is one that I think set the formula for a Mario Kart, um, Bowser's Castle, but it is also one that struggles to make itself feel as unique as a result of setting the formula. Everything that we see in this course is represented in some capacity, in some more difficult capacity, later on in the franchise between Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8, respectively. I admit I don't remember the Bowser's Castle of Mario Kart 7 or DS. Please forgive me for that. Oh, man. Well, we just cooked the monkey. Okay. Somebody's gonna go to Yale. We just cooked the monkey. Anyway, it's not a bad thing. It's just something of note. I admit that having played the games as long as I have, certain courses, while they were instrumental in formulating my opinion of the franchise and of the games as a whole, have lost some of their luster over the years. And yes, I'm going to say this right now. I truly believe that the Mario Kart Double Dash is not the perfect game. But it is about as close as you're going to get to a perfect racing game, and I am going to be open about that as well. But with that, 4 down, the first cup worth of races is sorted. And currently we are in first place with 8 points ahead of second, which means we are effectively 1 race worth of 3 points. Effectively, at this point, we can get last place once in this entire cup, guaranteed, without it affecting our placement at all. And this is going to become more pronounced throughout the course of this entire cup. With 16 races and 160 points to go around, it's expected that eventually the front runners will go further ahead and the people in the back will struggle. Anywho, Mario Circuit. What can be said about this track as a whole? Honestly, it's not as simplistic as some of the other ones that show up in various games. The moguls near the end, the large jumps, piranha plants, Goombas, and even a chain chomp all around to just make things a little more unique. Honestly, it's a pretty good starter track. Some tracks, like Luigi Circuit, the first time you play it is kind of... it's not great. The barrier in the middle doesn't exactly lend itself to being a more challenging track, but they adjust the track depending on the skill of the player, depending on the expectations the player is bringing with them. And this is, honestly, pretty genius. By allowing the easiest or more simplistic tracks to be augmented or edited slightly with later versions or higher difficulties to really sell that this game is something special, they inadvertently made Luigi Circuit one of the more chaotic tracks, despite it being the quintessential starting track. Anywho, Mario Circuit is more of a... It introduces the idea of stage hazards a little bit better than some of the other tracks would, but it also introduces the fact that most players are going to be more wary of the edges of the track, because you are effectively being shown that It doesn't matter how easy or how wide the track is, there will be hazards on numerous tracks. Part of your job as the player is to be able to acknowledge those challenges, acknowledge those hazards, and approach the problem accordingly. But race 6, we're off to Sherbet Land. And this is one course that I personally believe gets a bad rap. To be clear, there are individuals that I have talked to that hate this course as a result of the slippery ice physics. And that's a fair critique. It does have slippery ice physics, and that makes it more difficult. Absolutely. But we don't get to see many unique approaches to courses, and this is the one and only slippery ice course in the game. Now, part of the critique comes from the fact that Mario Kart Double Dash has a bit more slippery physics as far as the average Mario Kart does these days. Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8 both had what I'll consider to be more precise controls, especially in the steering department. The result of that is Double Dash kind of feels floaty and slippery compared to the rest. But dialing that floaty, slippery feeling up to what I'll call a kind of like a 7 or an 8 is not the end of the world, in my opinion. It makes for a more unique experience on this track with a relatively unique challenge at the end with these lovely freezies. Okay, that was lucky. The freezies effectively, if you run into them, freeze your entire cart solid, and you are continuously stuck in that for about a second or so. It's not meant to be the end of the world if you get caught in it, but it's not something that you ever really want. And we're off to Mushroom City. Mushroom City is, again, one of those traffic courses, but this one, comparatively to the Mushroom Bridge, ironically is kind of both easier and harder. Now, part of the reason for it being easier has to do with the fact that about a third of the course has no traffic whatsoever. The reason it's somewhat harder comes from the fact that for most of the sections that have a lot of vehicles, you're going into certain turns almost blind. And this is a little bit of a concern, but areas like the bridge here have safe zones set up throughout that make it much more reasonable and feasible to get across the bridge without getting hit by a truck, in the most literal sense of that statement. But don't worry, we are going to continue talking about that because we also have this wonderful area underneath, which has, to my recollection, 3 separate paths through it. One takes you through what is effectively a red carpet zone. One takes you to the right past a car wash, and one takes you around effectively the other side. All 3 of these paths work. They're all serviceable, but they're not ideal. And you'll hear a lot of idealistic game design in this particular challenge and this particular channel as a result of I have a habit of overanalyzing or overthinking things. And my biggest concern with a lot of games is that certain things were built with the tools that were available. And Mario Kart Double Dash, while it is an incredible game, has some moments that do leave me questioning. Note that I am also the type of person who can't properly critique or make um, or pick my favorites out of a list very easily because I see the good and bad in everything, and it's hard to actually parse out what I love or don't about a game and weigh it with any degree of accuracy. Anyway, we are on to the final race of the second cup, Dry Desert. And this, if anything, is probably the contender for the weakest track in the game. Dry Desert has things it does great and things it doesn't. At lower speeds, it ends up being a little bit of a longer track without much room of... not much for set pieces, not much that sets it apart from other games. You have the Sarlacc pit in the middle here that really doesn't do much if you know what's coming. You have some pokies, you have a tornado. All this is fair and reasonable. But deserts are one of those locales that in video games kind of get a bad rap. They have the tools to make deserts more unique, but the problem is that if your inspiration for a desert is a desert, you're not really looking at much. And so a lot of desert levels in video games, Mario especially, kind of leaves a lot to be desired. And that's something that is unfortunate. Oh, hey, it's Diddy and and Bowser Jr. Wow, I'm not paying any attention to that. But later games would use the Super Mario Bros. 3 Sun idea to be able to make more unique tracks by effectively firing fireballs at the player throughout the course of a desert track. And Mario Kart 8 does a fair bit just by changing a small section at the end of the track into a water section. Now, let me be clear, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but at least it does something towards making the end of the track feel a little less samey. And I'll give them credit where it's due. That's a pretty good thing to have going for you, especially in a racing game. But with this, 8 tracks down, 8 to go, and we are heading in to the last half of this particular All-Cup Tour with Dino Jungle. Now, Dino Jungle is centered around, effectively, one Brontosaurus. And I'll be honest, it's kind of a neat idea, but something that I would love to see revived at a later date. Because a Dino Jungle or a dinosaur theme has a lot of potential that you could actually pull from, be it maybe a set piece where there is a Tyrannosaurus trying to bite the characters off the side, similar to what a Chain Chomp would, or water geysers, bridges. You have room for giant monsters, effectively. Oh, hey, we knocked the Yoshi duo off the cliff. Cool. So there are 7 racers left in the track. But it leaves a lot of, it leaves a lot of room for inspiration. Maybe have areas where there's tar pits off to the side so that the players have more areas to avoid throughout the course of the track as a whole. But dare I say, it's okay. It is admittedly a giant somewhat glorified figure eight with some rather potent shortcuts near the end. But that's the thing, it's serviceable for what it is. Unfortunately, when you're doing an itemless challenge, a lot of those shortcuts that I would ordinarily try to take with mushroom cuts and whatnot are just simply not possible. This is the type of run that is a no holds barred, anything goes, play the game to the best of your ability, and effectively be good at the game. That is the long and the short of it, is just be good at the game and hope for the best. And I think in part some areas of the game do a fair bit more towards trying to make that work. Some tracks are going to be perfectly serviceable in a rather simplistic or short run type of this, where you're trying to do it without items. Some are far more interesting with items, but it's possible to do it rather easily without. And we just saw the princesses driving by, with one of them getting dragged behind a car. 90 points, which means any player under, I believe it is currently 10 points, is officially, no, under 20 points, is officially unable to catch up. Effectively meaning that the bottom 3 racers are officially out of the running. But that's okay. We'll keep going. And with this, we are in race number, I suppose it's number 10, Yoshi Circuit. This is one of those more whimsical tracks. The idea of a Yoshi-shaped island is not necessarily foreign to the idea of Mario as a whole. You have the Mushroom Kingdom, you have Star Road, you have the Dinosaur Lands. All of these areas are intentionally designed to be whimsical and let the developers go as wild as they needed to. But the thing with Yoshi Island specifically is Yoshi Island is one of the more difficult courses to really wrap my head around. You effectively drive on a giant Yoshi-shaped and Yoshi-colored track, making it a more unique approach to the game as a whole and to this type of video game. It is pretty unique. You have the flower beds making the little bumps and scales on the back of Yoshi's head. You have the giant shell. And on its own, it's pretty okay. It's a bit more of a complex course in terms of driving lines, but it's also one that how do I want to put it? It's not so complex as to be unapproachable, but it's not so easy as to be boring to a more advanced or experienced player. So it ends up kind of fitting that nice middle ground where it really works for everybody. And I think that's a pretty good goal to reach for any racing game, is that general approachability and general appeal. Now, some games strive to be more niche, strive to be a little bit harder to wrap your head around. Racing games are not that, much less kart racers. And so, having something that is approachable for all ages, all groups within your community is absolutely a must. And now, any player under 40 points is out of the running, which puts the top 3, the podium is effectively set. The bottom, anybody under 4th place and down can no longer take top spot. Which means the only characters left that even hold a chance of reaching the top are Yoshi Birdo, Bowser Jr., and Diddy Kong. And that's kind of a disappointing aspect, but oh well. Baby Park. Oh, Baby Park. Baby Park is that one course that some players absolutely adore. It is a course that scratches that itch for a chaotic romp through a track, where every player is catching and throwing as many items as they can, where bombs go off on the side and nobody bats an eye, where shells are bouncing from one end of the track to the other, and you effectively have to watch not just for other players, but exactly where other players are aiming. It is entirely possible to get hit by a stray shell from one end of the course, or a bomb, or something, anything. It is about as chaotic as it gets, and I know that 50cc doesn't exactly make it look the most chaotic. But Mario Kart Double Dash has really two major chaos tracks, that being Luigi Circuit and Baby Park, where it doesn't matter who throws what where, there's somebody who is going to be bonked a couple times. Baby Park down, anybody under 60 points is no longer in the running. Which means we are almost at a point where the podium is set. Waluigi Stadium up next with the effectively end of the third cup. Waluigi Stadium is one of those courses that has near universal appeal, in my opinion. The large ramps, the more rally-esque design really suits Waluigi Stadium as a whole. You have the mutt pits, you have item chaos, you have massive jumps and flame bars. This is designed as a course that is meant to emulate that rally-style racing. And, well, I think it definitely is one of those tracks that doesn't quite feel as complex as it could be. We have another rally-style track to fit that one perfectly. In the end, Waluigi Stadium, I believe, has been remade 3 separate times, making it one of the fan favorites of the entire franchise at this point in time. And maybe that's for good reason. I personally am of the mindset that if a video game is going to push the boundaries, if a video game is going to go this route, make it something funny or chaotic. Make it something that gives people a laugh. Nope, ow. Okay, and we have the star. Now, to be clear about the rules I had specified earlier, items that are left on the ground like mushrooms or stars are perfectly reasonable. If I intentionally used an item, that's where the rule was set. And I apologize, it is in this description below on every track, including the entire playlist for this particular series as a whole. So it is not me just making that up on the spot. Anywho, we are in the final lap, and we are effectively in the final 3 races. And if my memory serves accurately, we have... oh no, final 4. The final 4 are going to be more of a victory lap than anything. The reality is that there's not much more that can really happen. If we were to fall completely, there is nothing that can really stop us. There are 40 points left that we can get. And that means that provided we don't come in last place, we could get away with almost completely ignoring the rest of the entire cup and still stay in first. Not completely, but we're already at 120 points. What's another 40 more? We're going for the full 160. And while we're here at Peach Beach, there's a couple things I'd like to mention. First and foremost is that Peach Beach is based a little bit on Delfino Plaza from Super Mario Sunshine. And honestly, I don't mind that. Delfino Plaza is a very unique and iconic location within this universe, but along with that, you also have areas like Daisy Cruiser off to the side of the course here that really showcase that the developers knew what they were doing when trying to create a more interconnected world with this course. Along with that, while the course itself may look more on the generic or simplistic side, there's a few things that kind of make this course feel more unique. Of course, we have the Cataquacks, but you also have the Rise and Falling Tide. So what I like about that aspect is that your racing line will change depending on the tide. And I say that in the intent of an understanding. The higher the tide, the wider your racing line goes. Meaning that on exactly one lap of the race, you have a straight shot through the middle of Peach Beach, making or increasing the distance between players exponentially, which is a good thing. And at this point, if I were to lose every single race last place, there is still a possibility that I would win. But the podium is now officially set. Everybody who is going to be in the top 3 is already in the top 3. Which means the easy part is done. Now, I mentioned that I liked Peach Beach. Daisy Cruiser is another one that really fits this ideology of easy to learn, hard to master, especially with the moving tables. The idea that the hazards slowly move and adjust over the course of the race makes for a somewhat more difficult end game. But also, this is a course where the non-player characters are constantly using items to try to make certain areas of the track more difficult. The areas that are most commonly affected are right around this corner here. When you go down this set of stairs, it's effectively a blind corner to the bottom. You get to the bottom and almost always there's a stack of nanners here. The other is near the finish line, heading up that last set of stairs to the main deck. These two areas effectively work as kind of choke points, if you will. There are areas where you can slow down your opponents exponentially with proper item placement. But not all item placement is considered equal. If I were to drop a giant banana right in the middle of the track, there is a pretty good chance that it would not be hit at all. But hitting a giant banana in that area beside the steam shaft, really a good spot, because the area in which the opponents can effectively use to get around it is minuscule by comparison. And this is of course just a couple of small details, but these are small details that could, theoretically, make or break a track. And in this way, I believe that Daisy Cruiser truly lives up to the angsty, kind of grumbly Daisy herself. Anywho, with that, we are on to the final two tracks. And if my memory is accurate, this track, Wario Coliseum, is my personal favorite track in the entire game. My reasoning for it is actually pretty simplistic. It is a complex, windy mess of a track. Lots of jumps, lots of items, and it, when done right, is satisfying to simply get a clean lap on. It's one of those courses that you can't go in blindfolded. But it's always been one that I've looked at with a level of, this is really cool, really interesting, really fun, and kind of out there. And that's the beautiful part about this particular track. It fits that whimsical nature of Mario Kart to a T, while still allowing the player to really showcase high-end driving, good item placement. Okay, seriously? 2 of those? That quickly? Oofty. Of course, the jump over the giant pit in the middle of the course is one of the bigger set pieces of the track. And it's one that I have dodged a couple blue shells just making some good timed jumps. But where's the negative here? There has to be something, right? And truthfully, given that I'm the individual who is usually driving, I don't see any negatives in this track. It has a lot of items, a lot of item use. About the biggest negative I can see is that the difference between first and last place is significantly wider than a lot of other tracks get, as a direct result of its nature as a more complex and difficult track to navigate. But be that as it may, it is by far and away my favorite track in Mario Kart Double Dash. And I think it's kind of funny, because I've heard this one is really divisive. Either people really like it or they think it's boring. And I don't see how this track could feel boring. It is effectively on a similar scale to me as what most people look at for Waluigi Pinball. Anywho, with that, we are effectively in the final race of the first All Cup Tour. And yes, I will be completing Mirror Mode and All Cup Tour on an itemless challenge. Now, the reason why I want to mention that All Cup Tour is coming, the reason I'm mentioning it is because the final race of All Cup Tour is always Rainbow Road. And the reason behind it is objectively pretty simple. This is the finale, if you will. It was meant to be the finale of the Special Cup, something that set itself apart from other courses and other challenges up to this point in the game. Knock it off, Donkey Kong, quit ponching. But the real beauty of this track, in my opinion, comes down to the fact that this is more of a celebration style track. In other games, and I'm going to point to Mario Kart 64 here, it felt as not a victory lap, but something more akin to a major push in the right direction. It was meant to get the player feeling accomplished for completing the race as a whole. And Double Dash doesn't really disappoint in that regard. But something I will note is that every subsequent version of Rainbow Road gets somewhat higher in the sky, based on what I've seen. Because, like, the old NES ones were low enough to the ground that the hills were higher. You have Mario Kart 64, which has, it's floating above a little city, and it's all good. And then you have Mario Kart Double Dash, where you're in the city, but it's now a much more vertical style track. Jump ahead to DS, and it's even higher in the sky. Mario Kart Wii starts on the very much in space vibe. Mario Kart 7 uses Saturn's rings as a as a set piece, and Mario Kart 8 is around a space station. Every single course slowly but surely gets slightly higher up and goes with this space theme in a much more literal sense than what came before it. Something that I personally find funny. Anywho, there isn't much to say about this track. It's one that, when I was younger, I always found to be very challenging. And perhaps for good reason. The wobbly feeling of the track itself, the set pieces being a little bit more twisty, turny, and sometimes hard to see the bananas on the yellow portions of the track. But overall, it's one that I look to as a you did it kind of track. It is meant, I think, to make the player feel accomplished. You just beat Bowser's Castle, and you are effectively at the end of the road. You are ready to really rip into this game and finish it off. It's the end of every single All-Cup tour. It is meant to make you feel good. And if there is a single statement that fits Mario as a whole, it is meant to be a feel-good style game. Yes, some leave a little bit of frustration in their wake, looking at games that have those super challenging endgame levels, but by and large, they are always pushing towards this ideology of fun, of pushing the player to learn and grow. In the end, however, Mario Kart Double Dash 50cc All-Cup Tour Itemless Run is officially mission complete. But there's one more small thing we need to need. Because we didn't just go through a 50-minute long video to not see the beautiful golden car, Bowser and Donkey Kong atop it having a celebration of the ages, and a golden trophy to match. Absolutely spot on. Anyways, if you like what you see, drop a like, leave a sub, and maybe a comment. Love to hear it. Until then, have a good one.